the state of your marriage might reveal the state of your walk.
Yes.
Anybody can get on a stage and preach something down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if when you get off that stage, you're constantly like patterns of disrespect, dishonor, low integrity, that actually reveals where you actually are.
Yeah.
And so I think God in his kindness has given us each other to low-key continue to put us on our faces.
Yes.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
It feels like
this
is the hardest thing I have to do. But if I lean into that, then everything else will actually reap the benefits.
Yeah.
Preston, Jackie Hill Perry are back with us. Welcome back. And yesterday, I don't remember, what did we get into? Oh, we got into anger and family of origin issues that we bring into marriage.
Well, it's interesting, too, because even as we were off air, I was saying the way you guys have dealt with things coming into marriage, you do have and have brought in baggage and things from your past. But you've dealt with it very wisely, I feel like. And Jackie, you said there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, we were self-aware enough to know that without help, we won't work. And so from the beginning, he had Brian Dye, who was our pastor at the time. So Brian was basically discipling him in being a husband, being a leader, all the things. I had Melody Fabian, who was discipling me in being a wife and being a mother and all the things. And so throughout seasons, we've never not had leadership and counsel as it relates to showing up for each other as spouses. And so I think that's the big difference, is I think a lot of people are winging it, and you don't have the luxury of winging it when you have the flesh and the devil working against you.
Yeah.
Like in a multitude of counselors, there's safety.
But what about the people who are like, yeah, but you guys are the Perrys. Everybody wants to disciple you. I'm a nobody Joe in the back of the church and nobody knows me. Nobody wants to disciple me or us. What would you say to them?
Well, we weren't the Perrys when we were being discipled. I was Jackie, he was Preston, but we had a really good father. As in like God who sent us people, right? And so it was up to me to respond to their pursuit, right? So Brian connected me with Melody and was like, Jackie needs some leadership. She needs some guidance. Will you connect with her? I was a little resistant, but I also realized like, no, I need help. Like as a human being, I need help to know what it means to be a Christian.
Because if you look at, our past life or whatever, she, we both didn't really grow up in the church like that, right? She came from a life of homosexuality. I came from a life of just being a womanizer, like multiple sex partners or whatever. And so like when we came into marriage with all of our brokenness, I just think about the kindness and the intentionality of the Lord to bring people into our lives to disciple us, because we wouldn't have made it. We wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like God, he was just kind to us by sending people into our lives who would not only disciple us, but labor with us. That will remind me to love, Jackie like Christ loved the church. That will remind, Jackie to like, no, be patient, even though you're afraid, and those relationships, those mental relationships have helped, save our marriage.
And they still exist.
They still exist.
I still talk to Melody. I was with Melody last week. Melody actually, her and CD lead some family life things. And so like, I don't know, God is great.
But I want to just often talk about, I often talk about discipleship. A lot of times I feel like we cannot find people to disciple us because we have an idea in our mind what our discipleship looks like.
Yes.
That's great.
Right. And so like when Brian died, like, so one, I didn't grow up in church, nor did I grow up around white people. I grew up in a place called the hood. Right. And so, this guy, Brian Dye, he just started following me to all my poetry events because I was originally a poet. That's kind of how I got introduced to like the Christian world or whatever. And, I didn't have a church home. And so he saw I had this influence in the city and I didn't have no church home. And so he's this white guy starts following me. Jackie's my friend. At the time, right? We're not even dating yet, right? Because we were friends for 3 years before we started dating. And I said, Jackie, this white guy's following me everywhere. Like, I don't know what he wants.
Did he not even talk to you?
Yeah, he would walk up to me and say, like he wasn't a creep. He was just saying, man, like I think you need somebody in your life. I see you. God has given you influence. I think that you're a natural leader. All of these things, but you need to be in a church home. And so that he just had this heart, for me. That God gave him this heart for me. And I called Jackie, and Jackie originally told me, she was like, yeah, I don't trust that. Run from him. But then the Lord used Jackie, my friend, a couple couple of weeks later, she said, I feel like the Lord is telling me to tell you that you've been praying for discipleship, and maybe you shouldn't despise,
I think God is answering your prayer in a package you didn't expect.
Yes, that's what she said. In a package that you didn't expect. Because I had this idea that, man, I want a black, strong man of God to disciple me. I'm going to wait. And I would go around them, and, unfortunately, none of them even had a culture of discipleship, And this guy came in, and when he came in my life, he taught me so much. And then not only that, when the Lord put it on my heart to pursue Jackie a couple of years later, he said, I see that happening. Gave Jackie a job. Jackie was working at Wendy's in St. Louis. Gave her a job for her to move to Chicago to work at a nonprofit. That's how I was able to pursue her. And then he discipled us, marriage. And so if it wasn't for him coming into my life, I probably wouldn't even been with Jackie. And so
how sweet of God.
Yeah. So God is just very intentional. So don't push away discipleship if it doesn't come in the package that you think it should come in.
Yep. Jackie, what would you say to the women who are like, that's exactly what my husband needs. He needs somebody to disciple him. He needs to go after that. I've been trying to tell him. What would you say to her when she's trying to get up in his business of kind of just saying, this is what you need to do and this is who you need to go to, or he's just rejecting it?
One, you need it too. Okay, so let's humble ourselves and see that we all need leadership and guidance, which I think can cultivate a level of humility and even empathy. But I think prayer, and I think people think prayer is a cop-out.
Yeah. When
prayer is really all we have, because
that's a word.
When you can't control things, all you can do is surrender. We can't control what our spouses do, how they believe, how they move. We can influence or we can coerce, but the best thing to do is to pray. And so to just believe God on his behalf. And I think it's really a church community problem. So the bigger question might be, what kind of church situation are we in where this actually isn't a natural thing for there to be some type of discipleship? You know what I'm saying? So are we in a small group? Where it wouldn't be less about my husband needs one-on-one, but it's no, we need a community. Do we have a church situation where we just go and leave? So I think that might be one of the methods, is to just examine what kind of church are we in, and is it a church that is not just discipling my husband, but discipling my family?
That's good.
I think that's a perspective that we could work through.
I think too, is I've found this with my kids, even as they've gotten older, to say less and to pray more. And I think that needs to happen with our spouse. Of course we say it, but man, we have our husbands, our kids bathed in prayer. We've already gone to the Father over and over and over, talking to him about it. And he does. You're right. We're so flippant. Yeah, I'll pray.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not going to work.
Yeah. It's the doubt, which is like a double-mindedness, right? And so, because I was talking to Preston, I was listening to this sermon by John Piper 2 weeks ago, and it was called How God Uses Satan. And I was thinking about how if God doesn't control everything, then we actually can't pray about everything. But if he can control everything, then we have the confidence that we can pray about everything.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a game changer. Yeah. When you're this man, that little demon and devil, he can't do nothing without God's permission. Nothing happens in the world if God does not say so.
Yeah.
And so to me, that increases I can pray for the big things, the small things, the medium things, the irritating thing. That is what it means to pray without ceasing. You can start praying without ceasing when you realize that you actually can't control nothing.
Yeah, and if we can meditate on that, I think it would just increase our faith.
Me too.
To know that, we don't fight against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in high places. But we still are created by a sovereign God who controls all, right?
Oh.
And so, I think when we meditate on that, I think that we'll be more free to come to the Lord and say, help me.
And can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
It's not also as if when you pray, God won't commission you to move. The difference is the prayer gives you the wisdom on what to do.
And how to do it.
Right. So I've had situations with Preston or with even people where I will pray and be like, Lord, can you change their heart? Can you do this? Can you do that? Where I actually want to be, I don't want to be involved. But then the Lord will bring scriptures to mind where it's like, no, I want you to do this. I want you to say this. I want you to humble yourself. I want you, where it's like, oh, you actually do want me to do something. I just needed to come to you to get the wisdom to know what to do first. And so again, prayer has to be the first option.
Yeah.
I've shared this is on our vertical marriage small group, but I had gotten in an argument with our oldest, who was 13. And it was before school, and I can fly off the handle and get a little too hot. And so we got in the car, and I said, hey, I'm sorry. I just totally over-responded. I overreacted, and I'm sorry for that. But I want to talk to you before you get out of the car as I'm driving him to school. And he sat in the passenger seat with his arms folded and would not look at me, would not say anything. And that makes me mad. So now I'm like, hey, now don't shut down on me. Let's just talk about it. Like, what were you feeling? What were you thinking? And we pull up to the school, and I'm like, just let's say a word. Let me pray for you. He looks at me. He opens the car door, and he walks into the school. And now I'm like, oh. So now I'm like, what should I do? Should I go back and get him? Should I?
Hey, just by the way.
Yeah. Is this in a bag?
A prophetic bag.
This is in one of the bags I brought into our marriage. Conflict. Patterns of conflict. I was an avoider.
Wow.
When conflict would happen, my oldest son is doing what I would do. I just walk out of the room. And she would attack.
So I'm trying, and at this point, I'm not attacking. But what I first do is I'm trying to figure out, what should I do?
You want to fix it.
Yes, that's what I do. I fix it. I'm going to fix it. And so then I'm reminded of James. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him pray and ask God, who gives what? Generously for wisdom. And so, Lord, give me wisdom. I wish we would do that more, of just stop and pray and then wait.
That's good.
Does anything come to your mind? This image popped into my mind. I went home, I got this piece of paper, and I wrote a stick figure of a guy, a stick figure of a woman, and then I put this brick between us. That's the image that came into my mind. So I'm like, all right, this is weird, Lord, but I'm going to do it. Put it down on our son's desk where he studies every night. He comes home, comes down, he goes upstairs to study, comes down with this paper. He goes, Mom, what is your attempt at art? What in the world is this? I'm like, oh, that's what happened to us today. That's me. That's you. And that fight we had, that's a brick. We formed a brick in our relationship. He goes, I'm not even mad. I'm like, oh, I'm not mad. Oh, wow. But it doesn't mean the argument has been resolved.
Yeah.
We're just not mad. It's there.
Yeah.
And so I said, in CJ, I said, Dad and I travel around the country every day. We see couples who have a fight. They create a brick. They don't resolve it. They don't talk about it. Wow. And it doesn't disappear. Then they have another fight and another fight. And I did this whole wall. And I said, pretty soon there's a wall between them. They can't even talk.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, as only a 13-year-old boy can do. He goes, so how do we get rid of the brick?
Like, right.
Hilarious.
But it was awesome because we talked about it. We prayed. We apologized. And then I took an erase and I erased it. Which I'm only saying that because when we lack wisdom, God steps in and he gives us wisdom through people, through the word, through his spirit. Yep. And so to wait on that, I thought that was a good word. But I think you're right, Dave, that baggage, that was in there, and that's something we both carried in.
Yeah, did you guys deal with that at all? Because I didn't know I was bringing that in, but I brought in a belief about conflict, which is, and it's, again, family of origin. I watched two alcoholic parents fight and abuse each other and then get divorced. And I didn't know this. I brought it into marriage thinking conflict's bad. You avoid it because it ends like this. Yeah. And so we get in a conflict, and I literally would walk out of the room. One of the chapters of our vertical marriage book is come back here and fight me like a man, you chicken. That's what she said.
Oh, wow.
As I walked out, because I'm like, and I turned around.
Chicken is crazy.
Oh, it was awesome. I turn around and I curse at her, and then she double curses me. That's our marriage in year one.
And we're in ministry in year one.
I mean, that's how it be.
Baby new Christians.
Yeah, so
we didn't know.
In year one, we didn't like each other.
What?
For the whole year or what?
We didn't like each other because it was...
every other month.
Every other month. We, because, one, we're friends with each other for 3 years before we got married. And, we go into marriage and it's like, who did I marry? Right. Because one, I think nobody really prepared us, even though we had people discipling us. they didn't like. I think marriage is the thing that prepares you for marriage.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you like nothing would get you truly prepared like other than doing it. Right. You know what I mean?
It's all up here in head knowledge.
Yeah.
And then you live it out and it's hard.
Absolutely. And so I didn't even understand how hard it would be. Because of her past, in different stages when you're engaged, married, yada, 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 your heart becomes more invested. But for her, the more invested her heart came, the more fearful she became. And so she began to back off from me and like shut down really fast and stuff like that.
Where was that? What was that, Jackie?
I think it was a trauma response. Yeah, because it wasn't like I was telling myself to shut down. I think subconsciously, it's just like my cortisol levels were out the roof. Like, this is scary, all the things. But I think even to your point about communication styles, I think in light of that, Preston wanted to fix all the things. And the way he wanted to fix it was by rebuking me all the time.
What did that sound like?
Yeah, man. And so like that's what I was about to say next. Like, so when we got in marriage, she was shut down. And in my mind, I had all of this idea about what being a leader is in my head and what I read from books, but I didn't know how it looked fleshed out. And so I was a fixer. I'm always trying to fix things. It's like if you I'm the leader, and so
just
you
humble
have to
yourself, submit
to yourself. You know what I mean? And it was
Wait,
just
did
like,
he say it?
I'm sure he said it with a softer tone.
Yeah.
But the content is the problem.
Right.
You could be soft all day, but you're basically telling me to submit to you instead of asking me why I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Right there.
That's a different method.
That.
And one of the things that the Lord had to show me early on is that I became more of a Pharisee to her than Jesus. Right? If I'm always trying to expose sin, and it wasn't to conform her to the image of Christ or wash her with the word, like Ephesians 5 says. It was I'm trying to force her to come out of this little rut to fix my insecurity. Right? I wasn't trying to nourish her to present her faultless before Christ. I'm trying to force her out of this thing so I can feel like a good husband. So I can feel good about myself. So I can feel like, oh, my wife was like feeling this way, and I had a conversation, and now we're good, right? And so it wasn't even about Jesus more so than it was about my wounded ego, And so the Lord had to consistently remind me, like in order for you to see what you want Jackie to display, you first have to display it. If you want her to be humble, you can't tell her she's being prideful. You have to display humility. if you want her to be patient, you can't come to her with impatience. You have to display patience, right? And so I didn't learn that until like after year 2, going into year 3, where like I just relaxed. And I think I think young men who get married, they have a fear of failure. And so we try to force leadership instead of trying to model good leadership.
That's great.
You know what I
Really
mean?
good.
And so I was trying to force leadership. I wasn't trying to model it, right? And when I modeled it, Jackie started to see my friend again. Because when we got married, I was like, where did my friend go? Like, where did
She
went
wasn't
in
afraid.
a hole, bucko.
Yeah. And so when I started to
scary
model
out
it,
there.
it's like my force of leadership. It was kind of like me like covering her hidden like rose petals. And it's like as soon as I started to model it, she started to bloom in our marriage before me, and I was like, oh, this is what I need to do the whole time. It was really good.
I think that question, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're saying. Instead of saying, why aren't you submitting?
Yeah.
You're saying, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
I mean, were you able?
You were so afraid, Dave.
Oh.
I mean, I'm following you everywhere. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, we need to resolve this.
Yeah, she would just chase me around
But
the
you were
house.
so afraid.
I was afraid. I was a 5-year-old boy. Watch my mom and dad hit each other and walk out and drink, and I had no idea I was bringing that all. That's the luggage you're bringing in.
Did you have fear? So I know this is your podcast, but
No, do it.
We're putting our podcast hat back on.
Look at Ann. She's like, go after him. Go after him.
No, not go after him.
No, I mean, dig in there.
So was the fear for me, I had a deep, deep fear of my marriage failing because my mom and my dad marriage failed.
Oh, 100%.
And so, okay, that was the fear that your marriage would fail?
Yep.
Or did you have a fear, but was it also a fear that you would fail as a husband?
I think the biggest fear is I'm going to fail as a husband and a dad.
Yeah.
Like, I never saw a husband. I'm pretty much a new Christian, so I'm a couple years in, so I don't even know a lot yet. and I know I can't be a dad. Oh my gosh, wait till we have kids. I'm going to just be terrible.
Wow.
And I felt ill-equipped, and I didn't want to deal with it, so I blame her.
Wow.
And then she grew up in a pretty great dad, and I just felt like I'll never measure up to him. And I felt that for years.
But just that, like if we could just talk and go into the depths of what our fears are, what we're afraid of, it just gives you like, if your heart just softens. Like it makes me cry thinking about that 22-year-old that was so fearful of failing. And for you too, Preston.
And I couldn't see it. I don't know if you could see it in yourself. I couldn't see it. I thought I was the opposite of that. I'm a college quarterback. I'm an NFL chaplain. I'm the guy. Give me the ball. I'm going to deliver. And it was all cover up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
first year I couldn't see it at all.
Yeah.
And I think I was just trying my best to just force myself to be a good husband and force her to and I took it personal. I think husbands, especially young husbands, you shouldn't take your wife's mood personal. Like she's a human being, right? That God created her unique and she's nuanced. And it's like, I think I took so much of the blame of my wife is depressed.
Right.
I remember the first time she went through postpartum depression. I didn't know what that, nobody prepared me for that.
Right.
And it was like, I'm a bad husband because I can't, and it's just like, no, God actually just wants you to depend on him.
Yes.
And so I just had this big fear of failing. I thought I was just a bad father. I
felt the exact same stuff. Jackie, how did you deal with Preston feeling that way? Did you sense it and see it? And
I if anything, I was more offended than empathetic. So I don't think I knew all the things or how to process it with him and stuff like that. If anything, I just felt like, man, this dude is a lot. Like it's just he want me to be this perfect person that I just can't be, But I think I appreciate the work that he's put into fighting those things, because it's not as if it doesn't still come up.
Right,
it just doesn't come
right.
up as intense. But I think all external behavior has some type of underlying root
Right.
or
Me too.
reason.
Yeah.
All of it. And I think at the bottom of a lot of stuff that we don't discuss enough, I think we're starting to, is shame. We're
For
trying
sure.
to fight against this feeling of being inadequate,
Right.
Yeah.
of not being worthy, of not being valuable, this fear that, am I even worthy of love? Will the love stay? All those questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think we can't fix the root problem by just being self-aware.
Yeah.
We have to fix the root problem by seeing how does this connect to my belief or lack of in God, right?
Yes.
So if I'm afraid, who is the refuge?
Right.
Who is the safe one? Because he's not ever going to be completely safe because he's not Christ.
That's a good point. It's not about him getting fixed,
Yeah.
because that may never happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think even for me, I'm constantly having to wrestle through, if I am afraid of the thing, which is why I'm being avoidant, this is why I'm withdrawing, which is why I'm going in my hole, which is why I'm being guarded and lacking vulnerability. It isn't just me demanding safety from him. That's a factor. But it's also me going to the Lord and saying, you have to be the safe one.
Yeah.
So show me what that looks like.
Yeah. Consistently just reminding ourselves that God has called us to do life with other broken people. They're always going to fail us, It's just reality.
This has really come down to our continual surrender to Jesus, our healer, our place of hope. He's our refuge. He's our strength. How are you guys doing that in this crazy season that you're in of young kids? You're traveling, you're busy. How do you keep your walk with God vibrant?
I think perspective is everything, because I am pretty convinced that we don't have another option. Like when Jesus, he tell the people to eat of his flesh and drink of his blood, everybody leave. He turned to them. He like, y'all gonna go too? They like, no, where
else are we going?
I feel like that's the energy. I think we both, where are we going to go?
Yeah.
Right? And so I have no choice but to stay connected to the vine so that I might bear much fruit. And so I think that's the thing, is the perspective drives the behavior. It's because I don't have options, I have to keep praying. Because I don't have options, I have to keep fighting. Because I don't have options, I have to stay connected to community. Because I don't have options, I need to confess so I'm not walking in pride, because God resists the proud and give grace to the humble. But I also think church is huge. Like, the Lord has been kind to send us into another community where people are pursuing God with zeal, right? They love us as us. And so even that is helping to sustain us, because like, I think for a long time we felt like we were pursuing him with a certain zeal by ourselves.
Yeah.
And which meant that we actually weren't pursuing him with a certain zeal because we're comparing us to them.
Yeah.
And so now we say like, oh no, y'all can step it up a couple notches. So I think community perspective is a thing.
Yeah. I echo that. Also too, I think as a husband and as a leader, it's my job to protect my family, right? And I think when we think about protection, sometimes we don't think about protection spiritually. Like, that's our only protection, staying close to the Lord, especially if you're out here preaching the true gospel, right? Because I have a theory. I know this is kind of off topic. I think that when people go out, sometimes you might see ministries or whatever, or minister, and it's like, man, they started off really good preaching the gospel. Now they're just doing something else. It's like either the enemy is going to swallow you whole if you're not close to the Lord, or you're going to feel tempted to stray away from true teaching so you won't get attacked as much, right? But when you out here really preaching the gospel, you can't not be close to the Lord. If you out here teaching people about, the triune God of Scripture, you out here teaching people how to, be close to their spouse in marriage. If you out here teaching people about Jesus or whatever, I mean, it's a spiritual fight. I'll be a fool. I'll be a fool not to stay close to the Lord and not to encourage my family to stay close to the Lord, because the enemy hates that, right? And so for me, I'm always reminded to just beg God to help me. Beg God to help me so we can be safe, because we can't be out here with God things and changing people's lives and not staying close to the vine, so I'm always reminded of that.
It's funny, Jackie, I remember you were our first interview. Did you know that? First time that Dave and I...
When we became the host of FamilyLife.
I was the first one?
You were the first one in Little Rock.
Fantastic job. You would have never known.
I don't know about that.
We were so scared.
Brought out the guitar. I started singing and things.
I did?
Yes, you did.
Uh-oh. I don't know what I sang. I bet you it wasn't very good.
I remember what year
was
was that?
Gay Girl, Good God.
That would be 17, 18, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it'd be.
Why, what about it?
Well, the thing that I remember about
I remember you praying over.
That's what I was going to say. And to see you both, God has anointed you. He's equipped you. He has his hand on you. And I knew it, like when we were interviewing you, I thought, this woman, she's going to be used by God in a powerful way. And it wasn't it's like, well, I'm so excited for you. But there's another piece of me I'm scared for you. I'm scared for the enemy of what he has in store, of his plans and his strategies against you and Preston. And so I remember praying for you with that in mind. Like, oh God, protect this couple, protect her, so that Jesus would always be at the forefront. Because when you're in ministry for a while, you know that there are other things that come into play, and that you take your eyes off Jesus and you're toast. And so I really love and respect you both for keeping the gospel at the forefront, for keeping your walk with God, that you're desperate for him. That's what we feel like. We got nothing. Yeah. We got nothing. Yeah. But we've got Jesus. We've got the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And isn't that everything?
Yeah.
So thanks for your faithfulness.
Thank you.
I appreciate your prayers.
Yeah, we
the Lord heard you, girl.
Well, I remember watching Ann pray for you, and I thought, because we've been in ministry over 40 years, you can fake ministry.
Yes.
You can get good at walking on a stage. I'm not saying this about you. I've just, you can do it. And the walk with God can be, you sort of lost your first love, but you can still perform. And the crowd doesn't know.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking at Talbot Seminary, and I said, you can have a successful ministry with a lousy walk with God. And they're like, no, you can't. I go, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't. And it's going to crumble at some point. And, we're reading every week another pastor, another couple going down. And so what we've been talking about in our marriages of keeping Jesus as the center, falling on our face before him, surrendering daily. For us, it's like talk about our walk with God together. Because like I have my individual walk with God, but I'm one with her, so I don't. Yeah. This is us. And so it's like, what are you learning? What are you studying? What are you reading? It's like, man, that's got to be the center or it's just a show.
And I would actually argue that the state of your marriage might reveal the state of your walk.
Yes.
Right? Like,
talk that through.
Like anybody can get on a stage and preach something down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if when you get off that stage, you're constantly like patterns of disrespect, patterns of dishonor, patterns of low integrity that actually reveals where you actually are.
Yeah.
And so I think God in his kindness has given us each other to low-key continue to put us on our faces. Yes. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
It feels like this is the hardest thing I have to do. And so it must be the most sanctifying thing that I have to do. But if I lean into that, then everything else will actually reap the benefits.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like it's a backwards kind of situation.
Yeah. One of the qualifications of an elder is he has to be a manager of the home. And I think God in his wisdom made it that way. And, you know, I give my 9-year-old permission to be honest with me. And she came to me and she said, Dad, you haven't been keeping your word. I was like, whoa. And the first thing I thought about was, I've kept my word to every ministry obligation.
Oh.
That's one of the first things I thought about.
Yeah,
like, I've kept my word with your son Austin. Everything he told me to do, I did it because your son is my book agent. Everything they said, but you know, and I, you know, I'm there for every podcast interview. I'm there for every ministry, you know, opportunity. I'm on time, but you know, I'm the night parent. And so I tell them stories and, you know, and we talk about the Bible at night. And I come home and a couple times I just went to sleep without doing. And she said, you haven't been keeping your promise. And that was like a gut heart. Like it just hit me in my gut. And I was just like, wow. And that's just God just reminded me, no, this home needs to be tight before you go out and give the gospel to others. And so.
That was a powerful conversation, and we want to know what you thought in the comments below. So before you click away, say something. Let us know what you thought, and then we'll see you again next Saturday.